I stared at the bank statement on my laptop screen, my hands actually shaking. $47,000. Gone. Just gone. 3 years of careful planning, of saying no to vacations and new cars, of listening to Jennifer brag about her and Marcus's trips to Cancun while I clipped coupons and packed my lunch. $47,000 that was supposed to be our fresh start, and it had vanished in a single wire transfer with Michael's name on the authorization. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick right there in our home office. I read the transaction details again, hoping somehow I'd misread the amount. Nope. Same number staring back at me. Same date, 3 days ago. Same recipient account I'd never seen before. And then I saw the memo line. Personal loan to Michael, investment opportunity. Investment opportunity. Those 2 words would become the ones I'd replay in my head 1,000 times over the next few weeks, each replay making me angrier than the last. But I need to back up, because that moment at the laptop wasn't really the beginning. The real beginning was much quieter, much more normal. It was the kind of beginning that doesn't feel like a beginning at all. It was 2021 when I met Michael at that networking event downtown. I was working as a project manager at Hendricks & Associates, making decent money, around $68,000 a year, and actually pretty content with my life. I had my own apartment in Arlington, a 2007 Honda Civic that was paid off, and a friend group that actually got together for brunch on weekends. I wasn't chasing anything desperately. I was just living. Michael walked up to me at the bar with this easy confidence that made him hard to ignore. Tall, clean-cut, wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had this smile that made his whole face light up, genuine, or at least it seemed that way. He told me he was in commercial real estate development, that he just closed a major deal in Fairfax County, that he was looking to expand his portfolio. "You look like someone who understands numbers," he said, which was his way of asking me what I did. I laughed because it wasn't smooth exactly, but it was earnest. He wasn't trying too hard. We talked for 2 hours that night. About business, about life, about why I'd moved to Virginia from Ohio 15 years ago. He was attentive in a way I wasn't used to. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. When I mentioned I'd been thinking about leaving Hendricks because the company culture had gotten toxic, he didn't just nod. He asked specifically what I'd want to do instead. Nobody ever asked that. 3 months later, we were officially dating. 6 months later, he asked me to move in with him. His house was in Vienna, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial on a tree-lined street. The kind of house I'd driven past 100 times and thought, maybe someday. He made it feel possible just by knowing him. "This is ours now," he said the day I moved in, handing me a set of keys. I remember thinking how safe those words made me feel. Ours. Like I wasn't alone anymore. Like I belonged somewhere. The first year was genuinely happy. We'd cook dinner together on weekends, Michael always insisting on making his famous marinara, though honestly it wasn't that special. We'd sit on the back patio with wine, and he'd tell me about the deals he was working on. He'd sketch out these real estate projects on napkins, explaining zoning laws and development timelines like I was the only person in the world who could possibly understand. I loved feeling smart when I was with him. I loved feeling like I mattered. He was generous, too. For my 35th birthday, he surprised me with a weekend at a bed and breakfast in Charlottesville. He bought me a new laptop when mine started acting up. He took care of things without making a big deal about it. My car needed new tires. They were replaced before I even asked. The kitchen faucet was leaking. A plumber showed up on Saturday morning and fixed it. "I take care of what's mine," he said once when I thanked him, pulling me close. I should have heard a warning in those words. I should have recognized the possessiveness underneath the romance. But I didn't. I just felt loved. By year 2, we were talking about marriage. My mother came out from Columbus for a long weekend and fell all over Michael. She pulled me aside in the kitchen while he was grilling steaks out back. "He's a keeper, honey," she said, squeezing my hand. "You're going to have a beautiful life with this one." I wanted to believe her so badly that I didn't let myself question anything. Not when Michael suggested I quit Hendrix and help manage his real estate portfolio full-time. Not when he said it made more sense financially. I could handle the administrative side of his business, and he'd pay me even more than I was making before. Not when he was very clear that this meant I'd be financially dependent on him, at least for a while, until his business really took off. "You'll see," he promised. "In 5 years, we'll be set. Better than set. We'll have multiple properties, passive income streams. You'll never have to worry about money again." I gave notice at Hendrix on a Tuesday. Started working for Michael's company, True Point Developments, on the following Monday. The office was in a small suite in Falls Church. Just me, Michael, and occasionally his business partner Derek, who seemed nice enough but didn't show up very often. I handled invoicing, vendor relationships, permit paperwork, all the boring back-end stuff that Michael said was essential, but that he didn't have time for. And I was good at it. Meticulous. Detail-oriented. The kind of person who color-codes spreadsheets and actually cares about accuracy. Michael would lean against my desk and watch me work sometimes, saying things like, "This is why I knew I needed you. You're the only one I trust with this stuff." It felt like partnership. It felt like building something together. Then came the savings account conversation. It was early 2023, about 18 months after I'd quit Hendrix. Michael sat me down at the kitchen table one evening with a glass of red wine, and this expression I'd never quite seen before. Serious, but also somehow tender, like he was about to ask me something important. "I want to talk to you about something," he said. "About our future, about security." My heart jumped a little. I thought maybe he was going to propose. We'd been together almost 2 years at that point, and while we hadn't explicitly discussed marriage timelines, it felt inevitable. "The thing is," Michael continued, "I've been thinking about what would happen if something happened to me. Not to be morbid, but you're not on any of my accounts right now. My business accounts, my personal accounts. If something happened, you'd be in a vulnerable position." That was true. I'd never really thought about it, but it was true. "So I want to set up a joint savings account," he said. "A place where we can both contribute, build our security together. That way, if anything ever happened, you'd be protected." It sounded reasonable. It sounded like love, actually. Him thinking about my security, about my future. I said yes immediately. We opened the account at Wells Fargo the following Saturday. Michael and I, joint owners. I remember signing the paperwork and feeling this warm sense of being truly partnered with someone. This was what adult love looked like, I thought. Not just romance, but financial entanglement. True commitment. "Everything I have is yours now," Michael said when we left the bank. "And everything you have is mine. We're building this together." I started contributing to that account in March 2023. Every month, I'd transfer a portion of my salary, money Michael paid me from True Point Developments, into our joint savings. $500 here, $1,000 there. It added up. By the time we were approaching our second anniversary in mid-2023, we had almost $35,000 saved. Michael was thrilled. He'd come up behind me at my desk, the little home office off the kitchen where I did True Point's paperwork, and kiss the top of my head. "Look at us," he'd say, pointing at the latest balance on my screen. "We're really doing this. We're really building something." I was proud of it. I was proud of us. I was proud that I'd found someone who wanted to plan and build and commit. It felt like the opposite of my failed relationships before him. The guy who wanted to move to Denver without asking what I wanted. The one who was still obsessed with his ex. The one who I realized one day I just didn't like very much anymore. Michael felt permanent. He felt like arriving somewhere. So when, in November 2023, He told me he'd found an incredible investment opportunity and asked if I'd be willing to let him move the bulk of our savings into it. I didn't hesitate, not for a second. "It's going to triple," he said. He was pacing the kitchen the way he did when he got excited about deals. "I'm talking about turning 35,000 into over 100 grand within 18 months, maybe less. This developer in Northern Virginia is looking for silent partners, and it's a guaranteed return, literally guaranteed." "How is it guaranteed?" I asked. But the question came out weak, like I was asking just to ask. "Because it's already been approved by the county," he said. "The zoning's locked in, the permits are submitted, we're just waiting on construction financing, and that closes in January. By summer, the first phase is done, we get our cut, and we reinvest into phase 2. It's a beautiful model. It's exactly the kind of thing I've been waiting for." He pulled me close and looked into my eyes. "I wouldn't ask you to risk our security if I wasn't absolutely certain, okay? You know me. You know how careful I am with money." I did know that, or I thought I did. Michael was meticulous about the finances of TruePoint. He reviewed every invoice, negotiated with every vendor. He was the opposite of reckless. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." He kissed me, and I felt like I'd just passed some kind of test, like I'd proven that I trusted him completely. That was the moment, I'd later realize, when everything changed. That was the moment I should have asked more questions, demanded documentation, talked to a financial advisor. That was the moment I should have trusted my gut instead of trusting him. But I didn't know that yet. I signed the paperwork to move the money. $47,000, wired to an account in a different bank under the name of the developer, a company called Keystone Holdings. Michael showed me the documentation, articles of incorporation, a business license, even an LLC formation document. Everything looked official. "It's done," he said on the day the wire went through. "Our money is working for us now." I should have checked that account myself. I should have called the number on the LLC documents. I should have done anything other than what I actually did, which was trust my boyfriend and try to stop thinking about it. For the next 2 months, everything seemed fine. Normal, even. We celebrated Thanksgiving at my mother's house in Ohio. Michael was charming with my whole family, my sister Jennifer, her husband Tom, my nephew Kyle. He told dad jokes and helped wash dishes and asked my mother for her recipe for sweet potato casserole like it was the most important thing he'd ever learned. My mother pulled me aside before we left. "I'm so happy for you," she said, squeezing my hand. "This is the one. I can feel it." I squeezed back and didn't say anything, because what I was feeling at that exact moment was a small, cold thing in my chest that I didn't have a name for yet. It was the smallest seed of doubt, barely there, almost not worth acknowledging. We came home to Vienna on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Michael was quiet in the car, and when I asked him about it, he said he was just thinking about the Keystone project, that he expected to hear updates from the developer any day now. "Maybe we should take a trip," I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "Once we get our return, somewhere nice, the Caribbean or something." He looked at me for a moment, and something flickered across his face, something I couldn't quite read. "Sure," he said finally, "whatever you want." But when I checked the joint savings account on my phone the next morning, just out of habit, the balance was different. It was lower, much lower. I called Michael, my heart already starting to race. "Hey, did you move money from our account?" There was a pause. Too long of a pause. "Just a small amount," he said, "for some permitting fees on the Keystone project. I didn't think you'd mind. I'll replace it when the returns start coming in." I didn't press it. I should have, but I didn't. Instead, I told myself he knew what he was doing, that this was normal business stuff, that I was being paranoid. By December, I checked the account again. Another withdrawal. Then another. And then, 3 days before Christmas, I logged in and saw the final devastating balance. And I realized that almost everything was gone. All of it. $47,000, completely drained. And that's when I started asking questions. That's when Michael's careful, patient answers started sounding like lies. That's when I pulled up the Keystone Holdings website to do my own research and found a company that looked like a shell, with no actual projects, no actual presence, nothing but a generic homepage and a phone number that went to voicemail. That's when I finally understood that I'd been played. But understanding it and being able to prove it, I was about to learn, were two very different things. I sat in our home office with the phone pressed against my ear, listening to the voicemail greeting for the 4th time that week. The number on the Keystone Holdings website went straight to a robotic message about leaving your name and number. Nobody ever called back. "I need to talk to you," I said when Michael came home that evening. He was carrying Thai takeout from the place downtown, my favorite, which was supposed to be a peace offering before I even knew we were at war. He set the bags on the counter and turned to me with that smile, the one that had convinced me to drain our savings account. "Hey babe, long day?" "Michael, I called Keystone Holdings today. The number doesn't work. Not really. I mean, it's a voicemail box, but..." "Of course you called them," he said, and something in his voice shifted. It became quieter, colder. "I told you I was handling the investment. I told you not to worry about it." "Not to worry about it?" I could feel my voice getting higher. "Michael, that's $47,000. Our money. I have a right to..." "You have a right?" He turned away from me, started unpacking the food with deliberate, angry movements. "That's interesting, because as I remember it, you signed the paperwork. You agreed to this. You trusted me." "I did trust you. I still do, but I'm trying to verify..." "Verify what? That I'm not stealing from you?" He slammed a container of pad thai onto the counter hard enough that some sauce splashed onto the granite. "Jesus, Ashley, is that what you think? That I took our money and ran?" "No, But the words stuck in my throat because, actually, yes, that was exactly what I was starting to think. "I just want to see documentation, an account statement, something that shows the money is actually in an investment and not just gone." Michael stared at me for a long moment. His jaw clenched. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear it. "You know what? I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own house. I've been busting my ass trying to build something for us, trying to create a future. And instead of supporting me, you're playing detective." "I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking reasonable questions about our money." "Our money?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You realize you're only making that money because I hired you, right? Before True Point, you were middle management at some corporate hellhole, making 68 grand a year. I gave you this life, Ashley. This house, your job, your stability, all of it came from me. And this is how you repay me? By not trusting me?" The words hit like a physical blow. Not because they were true. I knew they weren't entirely true. I'd contributed to this household. I'd built something. But because he said them with such conviction, such certainty that he believed every word. And suddenly, I was questioning whether I'd earned any of this at all. "That's not fair," I said weakly. "What's not fair is coming home to accusations. What's not fair is feeling like my own girlfriend thinks I'm a criminal." He turned his back to me and started eating directly from the container, standing at the counter. A clear signal that I was no longer invited to this meal, to his space, to whatever this was. I went upstairs to the bedroom and lay down fully clothed on top of the comforter. My heart was racing. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been afraid to do. I called the Wells Fargo customer service line and requested a detailed transaction history for our joint account. The representative was patient, asking security questions, walking me through the process. When I saw the full list of withdrawals, my stomach dropped. There wasn't just one large wire transfer to Keystone Holdings, there were dozens. Small ones at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, dating back to November, just after Michael first mentioned the investment. But then they escalated. $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in a single day. And they weren't all going to Keystone Holdings. Some went to accounts I didn't recognize. One wire of $8,000 went to a company called Catalyst Financial Solutions. Another $5,000 went to something called Premier Capital Management. I scrolled through the list with shaking hands, my eyes blurring. By the time I reached the most recent transaction from 3 days ago, the one that had triggered this whole conversation, I could barely breathe. Michael wasn't investing our money. He was systematically draining it, moving it through multiple accounts and companies, and lying to my face about every penny. I heard him downstairs clattering around the kitchen, probably cleaning up the Thai food. The sound of him living his life normally, while I was having what felt like a minor heart attack, made me feel unmoored, like the ground beneath me had become something unstable, and I was just now realizing it. I called my best friend Jennifer. She'd known me before Michael, had actually been skeptical about him from the beginning, in a way I dismissed as jealousy. "Jen, I need to tell you something," I said when she picked up, "and I need you to listen and not judge me, at least not out loud." "Oh my God, what's wrong?" Her voice shifted immediately into crisis mode. I told her everything. The investment opportunity, the joint account, the missing money, the fake companies, the argument, the withdrawals. The words came pouring out like I'd been holding them in for weeks instead of just hours. There was a long silence on the other end. "Ashley," Jennifer said finally, "you need to talk to a lawyer." "A lawyer? I mean, maybe, but no, like today, right now. Before he realizes you figured it out." Her voice had taken on an urgent edge. "This isn't just a bad relationship decision. This is fraud. This is financial abuse. You need to protect yourself legally before he does something worse." "Worse how?" The question came out small. "I don't know. Freezes the account, moves more money, claims you authorize the transfers, takes out credit cards in your name, anything. You need to document everything and talk to someone who knows the law." After we hung up, I sat in the dark bedroom for a long time. I could hear Michael downstairs, the sound of the TV, his footsteps moving through the house like he owned it. Like he owned me. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. Not because I'd decided to leave him, I hadn't decided anything yet, but because Jennifer was right. I needed to understand what was happening legally, what my options were, what protection looked like. The attorney's name was Karen Morrison, and she had an office in Arlington in a building that smelled like coffee and old carpet. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. When I sat down across from her and started explaining, she listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. "Show me the account statements," she said when I finished. I pulled them up on my phone and handed it to her. She scrolled through, her jaw tightening with each transaction. "How much total?" she asked. $47,000, I whispered. "And he had access to this account?" "It's a joint account. We both have access. He's the one who suggested we open it." Karen set my phone down and leaned back in her chair. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to freeze that account today. I'll send him a letter stating that you're disputing the withdrawals and that the account is frozen pending investigation. Second, you're going to file a police report for fraud. Third, we're going to start documenting everything. Every email, every text, every conversation. Fourth, you're going to leave that house." "Leave?" The word came out like a gasp. "Like, move out?" "Immediately. Today, if possible. Pack a bag, go to a hotel, stay with family, I don't care. But you need to get out of there. He's shown you who he is. Now you need to protect yourself." I left her office in a fog. The morning sun was bright and harsh. People were walking past on the street, going about their normal lives, and I felt like I was in a completely different reality. A reality where my boyfriend was a criminal, and I was about to blow up my entire life by walking away from it. But I did what she told me to do. I went home while Michael was at his office in Falls Church. I threw clothes and toiletries and my laptop into a suitcase. I took the deed to the house from the file cabinet, just to have a copy, to understand what was mine and what wasn't. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "I know about the money," it said. "I spoke to a lawyer. We need to talk." And then I left. I drove to a Holiday Inn Express on the outskirts of Arlington and checked into a room that smelled like bleach and desperation. I sat on the bed and called my mother. "Hi, honey," she answered. "How are—" "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen." I told her everything, again. The investment, the fraud, the lawyer, the frozen account. I could hear her breathing change, could picture her sitting in her kitchen in Columbus, the one with the yellow curtains, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh, sweetheart," she said finally. "Oh, Ashley. I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I don't know if I'm overreacting. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe—" "There is no explanation that justifies stealing from you," my mother said firmly. "Not one. And honey, listen to me carefully. You need to stay away from him until this is sorted out. You need to listen to your lawyer. This man lied to you and stole from you. That's not a relationship problem. That's a crime." That night, lying in the Holiday Inn bed with the air conditioning unit rumbling and the sounds of the highway outside my window, I finally let myself cry. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. I cried for the money, yes, but more than that, I cried for the life I thought I had, for the future I thought I was building, for the man I thought Michael was. The next morning, Karen called me. "He's called the house 3 times, she said. "Sent 2 emails. He's clearly panicking. He's also claiming that you stole money from the joint account and moved it to your personal savings without his knowledge." My blood went cold. "I didn't do that." "I know. We have the statements. You didn't. But he's trying to muddy the waters, create a narrative where you're the bad guy. It's a classic move." She paused. "I'm also going to be honest with you. We're going to need to involve the police if you want to pursue this criminally. And you should. But that's going to be messy and public and painful." "What if I just take the money back and we move on?" I asked. Even as the words came out of my mouth, I knew how stupid they sounded. "You can't take back money you don't have access to," Karen said gently. "And more importantly, Ashley, you shouldn't have to. You didn't commit a crime. He did. And right now, you have leverage because he's panicking. He knows you're serious. We need to use that." That afternoon, I filed a police report. The detective who took my statement was a woman named Officer Susan Chen. She was professional and kind, and she didn't make me feel stupid for having trusted Mike. She took the account statements, made copies of everything, and promised to investigate. "These kinds of cases take time," she warned me, "but we will look into it, and the fact that you have documentation helps." By the end of that day, I had a protection order pending. Karen had filed it, claiming that Michael's behavior constituted financial abuse and that I felt unsafe in the home. I had a police report filed for fraud. I had a frozen joint account and a lawyer representing my interests. And I had nothing left but the truth. Michael had used me, lied to me, stolen from me, and made me feel crazy for questioning him. That evening, as I sat in my hotel room scrolling through my phone, I saw a text from Michael. "We need to talk. This is crazy. You're overreacting. Let me explain." My hands were shaking as I typed back. "You're living off me? Off us? That's the only explanation you need to give, and you're going to give it to a judge." The moment I hit send, something shifted inside me. The paralysis, the self-doubt, the desperate hope that there was some innocent explanation. All of it crystallized into something else. Fury and clarity. Michael had shown me who he was. Now it was time to make sure everyone else knew it too. The courtroom was cold and sterile, with that particular smell of old wood and fluorescent lighting that I would later realize smelled like justice finally happening. It was March 2024, 4 months after I'd left Michael and moved into that Holiday Inn, then into a studio apartment in Arlington that cost more than I wanted to spend but felt safer somehow. The discovery process had been brutal. Karen had subpoenaed bank records, credit card statements, everything. And what we found was worse than I'd originally thought. Michael hadn't just stolen our savings. He'd been running a Ponzi scheme for 2 years under the guise of True Point Developments. The investment opportunities he'd been pitching to other people, at least 17 other people that we could confirm, were completely fabricated. He'd taken over $300,000 total from various investors, always promising returns, always providing fake documentation, always disappearing when people asked too many questions. Our $47,000 was just one piece of a much larger puzzle of fraud. The morning of the hearing, I sat in the courthouse bathroom and practiced breathing. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely apply my lipstick, so I gave up and just washed my face. Karen had prepped me extensively on what to expect, but nothing really prepares you for the moment you have to sit across from someone you loved, someone you'd built a life with, and tell a judge that they're a liar and a thief. Michael looked smaller in the courtroom. That was the first thing I noticed. Without the house, without the tailored blazers and the confident posture, he looked diminished somehow, almost sad. His attorney, some expensive guy from a firm in D.C., was trying to paint him as a man who got in over his head, who made some poor financial decisions but wasn't a criminal mastermind. It was a defense strategy built on sympathy and minimization, and it made me want to scream. But I didn't scream. I testified. I walked through the timeline, the joint account, the investment opportunity, the fake companies, the withdrawals, the lies. I showed the judge the bank statements with my shaking hands and spoke in a voice that sounded calmer than I felt. Karen had coached me on this. Don't cry, don't show anger, just present the facts. Facts are more powerful than emotion in a courtroom. Michael's attorney tried to shake me during cross-examination. He suggested that I'd been complicit in the scheme, that maybe I'd known about the fraudulent investments and benefited from them. He suggested that I was vengeful and trying to destroy my ex-boyfriend's life because he'd ended our relationship. With each insinuation, I could feel my jaw tightening, but I stuck to what I knew was true. I didn't know, I said clearly, and I discovered the fraud through my own investigation when I realized the money was gone. I reported it to the police. I cooperated fully with law enforcement. Then Karen called her next witness, Derek, Michael's business partner, the man I'd barely remembered from the office in Falls Church. Except Derek wasn't really Michael's partner at all. He was an accountant who discovered the fraud himself and had already gone to the police 3 months before I did. He'd been cooperating with the investigation the entire time, recording conversations with Michael, documenting the scheme, gathering evidence. He told me the investments were legitimate, Derek testified, his voice steady and professional. He showed me fabricated LLC documents, fake permits, false bank statements. When I questioned him directly about where the money was actually going, he became evasive, then angry. He told me that if I said anything to anyone, he'd make sure I never worked in real estate in Virginia again. The prosecutor, a woman named Linda Martinez, who'd taken over the case from the police, presented her evidence methodically. Bank records showing the money trail, the fake company websites that Michael had created himself, with poorly edited photos and generic business language. Text messages between Michael and other investors where he promised returns he knew he couldn't deliver. Screenshots of his emails to various banks, creating fraudulent documentation. And then, the thing that made my breath catch in my throat. Phone records showing that Michael had opened credit cards in my name. Not the joint account I knew about, but separate cards. He'd been planning to drain me further, to use my identity to facilitate his scheme. Karen had discovered this during discovery, and we'd added it to the charges against him. Michael's face went pale when the prosecutor presented that evidence. His attorney leaned over and whispered something to him urgently, but Michael just shook his head, staring down at the table. The judge, a woman named Patricia Hoffman, who'd been practicing law for 30 years and had that particular expression of someone who'd seen every flavor of human awfulness, looked at Michael with something that wasn't quite contempt, but wasn't far from it. "Do you have anything you'd like to say, Mr. Harrison?" she asked. Michael looked up. For a moment, I thought he might try to deny everything again, might try to spin some new narrative. But instead, he just looked at me, really looked at me, directly, for the first time since I'd left him. "I'm sorry," he said. The words sounded hollow, like they'd been spoken into a void. "I'm sorry for what I did, to Ashley and to everyone else. I made terrible choices, and I hurt people. I don't have an excuse." It wasn't the moment I'd imagined I would feel victorious. I'd imagined his defeat would feel like triumph, like vindication. But sitting there in that courtroom, watching the man I'd loved admit to being a criminal, I just felt tired, sad, empty in a way that no amount of justice was going to fill. The judge issued her ruling 3 weeks later. Michael was ordered to make full restitution to all 17 victims, a total of $324,000. He was facing federal fraud charges that would likely result in prison time, pending a trial that hadn't been scheduled yet. The credit cards opened in my name were fraudulent, and I wasn't liable for them. The joint account was unfrozen, and my $47,000 was restored to my personal account, pending final settlement of the civil suit. On paper, I won. I got my money back, the criminal was exposed, justice was served. But the real moment of reckoning came 3 months later, completely unexpectedly. I was at Target, pushing a cart through the grocery section, when I literally ran into Jennifer from my old job at Hendricks & Associates. We'd worked together for 6 years, had gone to happy hours together, had emailed about our weekend plans. We'd been friendly in that professional way that doesn't quite become real friendship. "Ashley," she said, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, I heard about everything. I'm so sorry." "Thanks," I said, not sure how much she actually knew. "My sister actually worked at the same building where Michael had his office," Jennifer continued. "Falls Church, right? And apparently my sister saw some things. She always thought something was off about him. Kept saying he seemed sketchy, but, we didn't want to judge." She paused. "She actually called me after she heard what happened and said she felt terrible for not saying something to you." I just nodded because what was I supposed to say? That her sister should have told me? That everyone around me should have seen the signs and warned me? That would mean living in a world where I was too stupid to see the obvious, and I'd already spent enough time in that world. "You're going to be okay though, right?" Jennifer asked, and she sounded genuinely concerned. "I mean, you got the money back?" "Yeah," I said. "I got the money back." But as I walked away from her, pushing my cart toward the checkout, I realized something that would become clearer over the coming months. Getting the money back wasn't the same as getting my life back. The money was just money. What Michael had taken from me was something much more fundamental. He'd taken my ability to trust. He'd taken my sense of safety and intimacy. He'd taken 18 months of my life that I would never get back. The civil suit settled 6 months later for the full $47,000 plus legal fees. Michael's assets were seized: the house in Vienna, his car, his business equipment. Everything was liquidated to pay back the victims. I could have felt satisfaction about that. I could have felt like he was getting what he deserved. Instead, I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt something so complicated and heavy that it couldn't be reduced to a single emotion. I used part of the settlement to pay Karen, the rest to rebuild my savings. I went back to Hendricks & Associates and asked for my old job back. My old boss, surprisingly, said yes. He'd heard what happened and seemed almost relieved to have me back, like my experience with Michael had somehow validated his decision to hire me in the first place. Jennifer called me a week after I started back at Hendrix. "I'm so glad you're back," she said. "And I want you to know, my sister really did want to reach out. She feels awful." "Tell her not to," I said, and I meant it. Tell her it's not her responsibility to save me from my own choices. The truth is, I chose Michael. I chose to trust him. I chose to move in with him, to quit my job, to open that joint account, to sign paperwork without reading it carefully, to ignore the small voice inside me that whispered doubt. He lied and stole, yes, but I was the one who made myself vulnerable to those lies. That was the lesson that stuck with me, even after the court cases ended, even after the restitution was paid, even after Michael pled guilty to federal fraud charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The lesson wasn't that men are monsters or that love is a trap. The lesson was that I had to listen to myself, that the small voice of doubt wasn't weakness or paranoia. It was wisdom. It was the part of me that knew something was wrong, even when I was too afraid or too invested to act on it. 2 years later, I was promoted to senior project manager at Hendrix. I bought a small condo in Arlington, nothing fancy, nothing that required a man to make me feel like it was possible. Just a place that was entirely mine. I started dating again, carefully and slowly, and I found that I could enjoy someone's company without immediately planning a future with them. I learned to ask questions. I learned to wait. I learned to trust my gut. Michael was released from prison in 2028 with 5 years of probation and restitution payments that would follow him for the rest of his life. I don't know where he is now. I don't think about him very often. But when I do, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel something more like gratitude, which is perhaps the strangest thing of all. Because in destroying my life, Michael taught me how to build one that was actually mine. He showed me that I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive devastation and come out the other side not broken, but transformed. He proved to me that I didn't need anyone to make me feel safe or successful or whole. I just needed myself. And it turns out, that was enough.